Hey everybody, I'm Marcus Hazelwood, and welcome to Clear Haze Exchange. I'm an energy engineer with over 15 years of experience in sustainability and energy efficiency consulting. Many find these topics a little complex, so I created Clear Haze Exchange to help provide clear, actionable insight, clearing the haze, so to speak. We'll cover plenty of topics under the umbrella of energy efficiency and sustainability. Let's get into today's conversation. Welcome, listeners, to season 2 of Clear Haze Exchange, where we explore the hidden systems shaping sustainability, performance, and the built environment. Today's guest I'm really excited about having a conversation with is Amanda Muzzarelli. Amanda advises leaders on corporate real estate and facilities strategy, helping organizations uncover the overlooked systems that shape workplace performance, trust, and sustainability outcomes. With more than 20 years of experience leading large scale operational transformation, including hybrid workplace strategy for portfolios exceeding 400 million, Amanda developed invisible architecture and narrative architecture to help organizations see what's actually driving results beneath the surface. Her work focuses on aligning people, process, and physical space to support long term performance, clarity, and confidence in decision making. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I love the information that you've spearheaded developing the invisible architecture and narrative architecture. It's a really exciting concept for my listeners when you dig into this and understand. So we'll be able to get this firsthand from what you've created. But what has really gotten you excited about being in this space and motivated beyond just working with a company, but this is something that you do and have a passion for developing in your personal time?
Marcus, I it's funny. I started out in public relations and communications. That's kind of where I grew up. I did that for 10 years before I went to facilities management. And at my first little crisis that I got to manage, I was hooked. I just thought the buildings are so important and so fundamental to the way the business executes its work that it was a very important part, and you got to see behind the scenes of a lot of things that you usually don't hear about until it's over and done. I've really enjoyed being on the inside of those decisions through the years, so that's what kinda hooked me into FM overall, and continuing that frame, really trying to bring together my communication skills and background along with the corporate real estate and facilities managements where I really see a crossroads where of the skills that I have that I can really contribute and help FM leaders and corporate real estate leaders bring about the results through their people that they want.
Good. That's good. So what would you say is one invisible workplace issue leaders feel every day, but rarely name out loud?
I would say that one thing I see repeated, a pattern, is every organization I've ever worked with believes they are unique and their situation is unique. Now, the details of the situation are unique, but underneath it, the details, it's just the same things are always happening. Decisions are made in the conversations that never get documented by people who aren't even in the official decision making process. And the execution gets stalled because nobody understands those behind the scenes conversations that have been had. And everybody just blames the process.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that invisible decision layer is the tough layer.
Yeah. In many cases, the overall goal can be something that everyone recognizes, but providing the proper support and resources to ensure that it happens. You're right. Communication is a huge piece of that. So, with that said, I like to ask this question kind of elevator pitch and getting to that short answer language that captures a lot. So, this next question is structured around that. So if you had 10 seconds to explain what you do to someone outside corporate real estate, what version makes them lean in and listen to what you had to say?
10 seconds, huh? Okay. I would say, you know how a company can spend millions on a brand new office and then 6 months later, nobody wants to go there? I help figure out why, and it's almost never about the building.
That's good. That's good. I would certainly lean into want to know more
Go, "What?" Yeah.
wow, because it is, it's a huge investment, um, and the dollars are put up to into an office space. It could, in the millions, especially in the corporate world. I like that response. So what moment in your career made you realize most organizations are solving surface symptoms and not system level causes?
I would say that the moment that, made me realize that there were some other things going on that weren't visible was when I was helping a company come up with a workplace experience strategy. And we had collected data and input from all different departments and all different types of groups. And the buy-in was very big. I mean, there was a lot of buy-in for that because we had developed so many resources and relationships. Then we wanted to do a survey of the overall employees, and the survey got killed. It got killed even though we had already paid for it because the underlying decision in the background was if we ask people what they want and they tell us, but then we don't give it to them, they're going to be disappointed. Instead of saying, hey, the survey is a way to find out people's preferences and how they're working today. It was just one of those situations where I kind of stood up and went, hmm, there is something else going on here.
Mm, that's good. That's good. What you find what you find out when you really ask people to be honest and straightforward with what they really want. And it's a really hard. It's a challenge when you're trying to meet goals from your upper management and what their expectations are. And you're right. I've seen that in terms of facility managers being a consultant on the outside and helping, whether it's an energy audit or systems energy study. I've always been an advocate for it. I want to sit down and get really close with the facility manager because as much as I can come up with ideas from the outside, what really matters is what that facility manager who's been there and is there every day understands. Oh, that's what really matters. And unfortunately, a lot of executive teams aren't listening to that facility manager. They're just hiring that professional to come in and make the moves and changes. And that facility manager is constantly complaining.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, this one, thing happened where you actually talk with the senior executives, and they'll say about sustainability, they'll say, "I want the awards and the recognition like these other companies are getting, but I don't wanna spend any money." And that at least you can work with that. People have certain sustainability goals that they put out there, and if they don't really talk about the real goal that they're looking for and what they're really willing to invest, then uh, you're kind of shooting in the dark and you're just not sure what to do. But if they're very forthright like that, saying, "Hey, I want to win some awards, but I don't want to spend money on it," then at least you know what direction you need to go. You need to really go with grassroots, employee inspired action that can be measured and aggregated so that when you do report it, it does have some impact.
Yeah, that's good. So across the portfolios that you've advised, what patterns show up repeatedly, regardless of industry? And if you could give, example, different industries you've advised and the facility management world you've been in.
Well, as far as the patterns I see, there are more regulated businesses, manufacturing, if it's food, drugs, cosmetics, those types of things. They have a lot more, I want to say, regulations and rules that they have to follow, which is completely understandable. So you want to make sure that any sustainability or any changes you're making aren't in conflict with those rules. Some patterns that I've seen, and this is it just happens. There's a lot of good intentions. Companies want to participate in sustainability. They want to do things like centralized trash and, composting and all these things. And even in the best laid plans, when someone is, putting that centralized trash, there's been announcements about it. Everybody's going to do it. They take away those desk side trash cans. And if one executive says, I want my trash back, I need to have my desk assigned tra trash bin or waste bin, then as soon as that gets out, everyone thinks it's optional. So, I mean, that's a pattern that's a never good. You really wanna have that sustainability messaging and that strategy be executed all the way through the organization.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into the next question. That was a really good example, a practical example. So, why do so many sustainability or workplace strategies stall even when the technical solution is sound? So, you have a designer or a professional come in with a sound ROI, everything makes sense on paper, but in terms of sustainability, where do they stall? Besides the example, that great example that you gave.
I would say that those strategies, as wonderfully built as they are, and they look great in the PowerPoint deck, in the final deliverables, they're really built on that assumption that people are going to choose to do the right thing, the right behavior, and that if you explain why it matters, they'll do it because it's the right thing to do. The truth is, they won't. Not consistently. Behavior follows structure. If a path of least resistance leads away from sustainability, people are going to take that path just because it's easier. So, for example, we have two grocery stores in town, and one gives away flimsy bags, cheap plastic bags for free. The other one charges 10 cents for a really good, sturdy, usable bag. Same community. One sustainability strategy is working, the other isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. I like that example of path of least resistance. This is where water goes. The path of least resistance, it's where air goes. This is how the systems work, and it's certainly, like you said, it's how people work. Fortunately and unfortunately is but, you can take away the unfortunately, I think, if you understand the reality and accept it. Because if people are going to do that, why not build into your system or recommendation or design something that accounts for that? I think that's what you're getting at. I really like that thought process.
But yeah, you have to make it easy. You have to make it easy to do. If you're going to have a centralized trash, make sure it is a place that gets traffic where people will naturally flow off the floor into a centralized place. Those are design principles that we think about in FM all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that even me being in this space, sometimes I've gone to a cafeteria where I have four different options of recycle, compost, you know, all these different decisions you're making with your plate. I might be like, I'm in a rush and I'm not going to do this properly. Even myself admitting the path of least resistance is I have to be somewhere. I don't know how this fork was made, or it's not clear to me enough to follow the intent of the goals. If it's not laid out easily for people, they're likely to take the path of least resistance.
Yeah, I like it when I see the pictures. Like there are some of those stations that actually have the pictures up and as well as the list of products that go into each bin. But pictures are a good quick way visually to communicate the information about what goes in that bin.
And pictures of the utensils that you have in your hand. I've seen a cafeteria that has compost written on their utensils, that when you go up there and you see the compost and the, recycle, you see exactly what you have and where it fits, and that makes for an easy decision versus thinking, "Is this bowl, is it compostable? I didn't see that written on the bowl," or, that. So I think it's important to understand that the intent is great, but the reality is how will it work, with occupants? So getting into or thinking about the invisible architecture, which is something that you've developed, which is what you feel leaders overlook, and I agree. And as we understand and learn about this, I think it'll make more sense for our listeners. So, if invisible architecture were a physical structure, what part of the building would most leaders walk past without realizing it's running everything?
Yeah, it's a great when I the mechanical room, I would say, is the invisible architecture. You got boilers, chillers, power substations. Nobody tours that. Nobody really thinks about it. It just happens. But you feel it the moment something's off. You'll know it if the HVA system doesn't work. feel really bad very shortly. Uh, but invisible architecture is exactly that same way. The hidden systems behind that run any organization, whether it's the level of trust between the teams, whether it's the culture itself, the power dynamics between departments, you don't see them on any org chart, but they determine everything that happens above them.
Yeah. Yep. That's good. That's good. So what would you say, what invisible barriers show up within the first hour of evaluating an organization outside of, of course, what you just mentioned, not being able to see, but feel it?
Yeah, yeah, to feel it. Within the first hour or so, if I'm listening for how people talk about the decisions that came from above them. If there's hesitation, a little discomfort, little side glances or vague answers, that does tell me everything I need to know that those decisions behind the scenes, the context was not shared. And when people don't have the context, they'll start filling in the gaps themselves. They create a story, and the story is usually never uh, it's never flattering, and it's always more damaging than the truth would have been.
You can certainly get a sense within an organization, especially with people that have been there, 10 plus years. You can get a sense quickly. But you're right. And being able to point out those things and recognize how they would apply to a larger picture is certainly strategic and important. So how do misaligned incentives quietly undermine sustainability initiatives?
Um, this kind of goes back to the structure conversation. If people are not incented to do the thing, they will take the path of least resistance because there's no other incentive. There's no other benefit for them. So, for example, let's say that sustainability and reaching certain goals or milestones are on your plan, and if you don't meet them, and there's no disincentive, maybe it's a certain part of your bonus calculation as far as your ability to achieve that, or at least take the steps to get the program in place, whatever it is that you're measuring. If you're not measuring those things and rewarding or, or not say punishing, but you have some things at risk because you didn't do it, that does undermine the message. I've seen so many organizations try to make changes in the way that they lead people and the way that they um, try to get motivated, get that workforce motivated to do something or a leader to do things differently. And if it's not part of the overall grading calculation, it doesn't get attended to because it just feels optional.
Yeah, it's a push for leadership to identify and recognize some of the things that you're talking about. And it's of course it's always great when someone like yourself is thinking this way at the leadership level to help because uh, in terms of decision making, um, you cannot make change happen if you're the facility manager trying to encourage people to do and meet different goals. It has to come from leadership.
Yeah, and it has to be kind of part of your business.
Yeah,
And why are we weaving this into our, business strategy this year? It's because we want to reach these goals because it's the best thing to do for and then you lay out your answers. What's the because?
yeah,
What's the why?
yeah, yeah. So, what's the smallest early signal that tells you an operating model and sustainability goals are on a collision course?
I would say it's definitely the desk side waste baskets.
Yeah,
If you see desk side waste baskets in an organization that says they're pursuing sustainability goals, it's cosmetic. It's entirely cosmetic because they haven't done some of the basic things that are easy to do and actually help lower their expenses. Because when you have a janitorial supplier who has to go through the building, go into offices, empty the trash, whether it's during work hours or not, that's extra labor hours that you're paying for. I mean, you're really cutting a big chunk out of labor hours if people are emptying their own trash in a centralized place. So that could actually help your sustainability goals and save money at the same time. That's a very easy yes. And if they're not doing that even, then maybe they're not serious.
Yeah, yeah. So that sounds like if they're just kind of implementing the sustainability strategies that came from their design team or their design consultant and saying, "Yep, we're on track. We're doing what we're supposed to do."
Yeah, like, don't plan to, upgrade to energy efficient, hardware in your mechanical rooms if you haven't done the simple things first.
Yeah, that's good. So when a leader says, "We're ready to change," what's the first uncomfortable question you ask them?
So, I would say, I would ask them, what does success really look like? What do you want to achieve? Specifically, not we just want to be more sustainable. And this is where, hey, if there are certain standards that they want to meet, if they have certain goals, and I've seen organizations kind of waffle on those the past couple of years, but you have to know what success looks like before you can develop a strategy or help coach someone how to get there. If you don't need to do that, then it's undefined and it's really hard to reach an undefined goal.
Sense. Thinking about the narrative architecture and that, from that question, communication, as you mentioned, is very important, and why communication makes or breaks strategy is a critical thing to think about, and to address with an organization. So, how does narrative architecture help leaders see what dashboards and consultants often miss?
Well, narrative architecture is just the concept of how you're going to build your story around the goal that you're looking to achieve. Um, how you build a story so that you can kind of win the hearts and minds of people to buy into your strategy or your change. And you can have all the dashboards there are that say, here's how we're proceeding. But if there isn't a leadership message around that, um, that's, it will get missed or it will get kind of pushed aside as, okay, yeah, that's the data, but what are we really trying to do?
So, with that, when you developed this concept of narrative architecture, what experiences drove you to develop something like this?
I used to be, when I back in my communications days, I've been a executive speechwriter and communication strategist for executives along the way. And oftentimes, their executives reach a certain level where they say, "This is what I want to do," and they don't have a why, or "This is what we need to do as a business," and there isn't a really compelling reason. And they sometimes don't understand, well, why what else do I need to say? This is my operation. This is how we're gonna proceed. This helps executives give language to the goals that they wanna accomplish. It also helps them, build their own personal brand or perspective on things so that there's less interpretation in that open space between the context and the action. And it's easier to get everybody on the same page when there is a clear line of communication. And it's very, I mean, clarity is the first foundational thing that you need uh, as a communicator so that your audience knows, okay, what are we talking about? What are we trying to do? And executives are often way too close to their own story to tell it very well. Um, and the scope and the metrics, those are just the walls of the story. It's not the story itself.
So, what narrative actually unlocks investment decisions when, like you said, those spreadsheets alone don't move the room? Those great plans that that come from the design engineer, the professionals, but the reality is organizations are unique in how they operate. So, what narrative actually unlocks investment type
Mhm.
decisions?
Yeah, the what are we gonna invest in this? Um, Data itself is just evidence. It's not the story. And evidence without a story just sits there. Nobody makes a decision because of a spreadsheet by itself. They make decisions because they can see what happens if they don't. So instead of presenting the, ROI on reverse osmosis water coolers, you should say, install these and people will bring their Yetis and their Stanleys to the office to refill them. They'll even fill them up before they go home, which means fewer single use uh, water bottles in your waste stream. Oh, which moves your sustainability numbers from here to there, or whatever percentage you're going for. Now, the executive team and everybody around can actually see the behavior in their mind. They can see this outcome and see themselves making a smart decision. That is what will move the room.
That's good. That's good. So navigating functionality of the office so that we're not just giving good ideas or implementing good ideas.
Well, and you think about a reverse osmosis, water cooler, they're expensive. I mean, there is no doubt, but the water tastes better. And you don't have to worry about, what's in it. So I think that that's one of those things that, um, people see the advantage for themselves personally to participate in that, and you do have to make it easy. So, yeah, I forgot my water bottle today." Well, another solution to that is you just don't sell single-use plastic in your building, and I've seen that before, and it really you have to kinda think about all the things that we use plastic for. I mean, there's a lot of plastic. What's the actual reality of how you implement that? That's a whole 'nother ballgame. That is everything to do with supply chains and what's available in the marketplace and how much that costs. Yeah, I do like the shared cabinet with on the additional vessels that you could put, water, and I think they have that a lot at, like, the WeWorks and things like that. But is that something you should have in your office?
The other thought that I had as you were explaining is scope 3 emissions, which for listeners not familiar, it's something that is based on ongoing consumables. There's a carbon emissions impact from what you purchase. And if you think about the life cycle from purchasing all these things, throwing it away, and then going to the landfill, even if you're considering recycling, how much does it take to generate those products, bring them to your office, and then dispose of them versus having an ongoing, thing? How much can that impact your scope 3 emissions? And it's not only carbon impact, it's also cost impacts. And I think it's really valuable to understand that reality, to your point.
Yeah. I think scope 3 has been consuming a little bit more of people's attention lately because at first they don't feel like they have an impact on that, but then you start looking around, especially when you start looking at, "Oh, what are our vendors doing?" Yeah, and
Yeah.
so on and so on. And you realize every decision that you're making about your facility has a ripple effect.
Yeah. Yep. Very true. So, speaking of leadership and industry blind spots, you've seen transformations succeed and also you've seen them fail. So, what separates the two?
The the teams that do succeed, the winners, they are not afraid to call out what's actually broken. The RACI chart that nobody follows, the decision rights that were never clearly assigned in the first place, leaders who have to check 2 levels up before they can move on anything, budgets that get separated from the decision makers, and that require them. Um, you see every one of those are known problems. Everybody knows those types of problems exist, um, and nobody's talking about it because the conversation feels a little too dangerous. It calling something out that we all know is there. It's the elephant in the room. The winning teams have someone who's willing to go forward and say, "We're going to have this conversation anyway because these are the barriers. These are the things that will get in our way if we're actually trying to transform and change the way that we work." But as soon as somebody's able to call that out and have those tough conversations, that's when the transformation really starts.
Good. That's really good. So, what trends in facility management and commercial real estate gives you confidence that the industry is maturing?
I've had a couple conversations with FMs even this week. Um, that especially during like COVID, FM was invited to the table. It was really important. It was a little bit scary. And now with the aftermath of that, FM is finally being asked to sit at the table during those real estate strategies discussions, not just to execute after the decisions are already made. That is a meaningful shift. And the data that sits inside your facility operations, utilization, behaviors, condition of the facility, the performance, it's important information. It is strategy grade. It tells leaders exactly what's actually happening before there's a survey, before the dashboard gets updated. The industry is moving from service provider to strategic partner, and it's slowly slow. And somebody asked me the other day, how do you keep that momentum? And that's where we have to target some of those areas that are becoming more important to companies. Sustainability will definitely be one of those areas. It's moving in that direction.
Sure. Agreed. So where's the industry still hiding in plain sight?
Um, Still hiding in plain sight. I really do think that um, we have so many opportunities for leaders. The leadership in facilities management is at a crisis state. Uh, a lot of facility managers are approaching that age where they get out and they retire, uh, and there isn't a whole class of people coming in who are there to backfill. So you have all of this built-in knowledge that might leave with these seasoned leaders, and you don't have people, banging down the door to become FMs. And that is a responsibility that before people leave the area, they need to kind of help bring people up with them so that they can be replaced and we can kind of have that continuity of leadership along the line. I think that's something that's kind of in the background that we're not necessarily taking a hold of the way that we could.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely agree. There's a conversation I had with a chief engineer in the data center industry, and he gave a lot of insight to your point about facility managers that have the experience, know what's needed, but in many cases don't have the power to orchestrate the resources and needs appropriately. And he was, talking about how he's moving out of the industry, but they need more people that understand at his level, that are trained appropriately, that can actually work with facility managers to properly manage that facility. And then again, it points back to investment dollars because the executives want to run a building operations that's sustainable in terms of economics. And like you said, facility managers are a critical piece to long-term sustainability of operations.
Yeah, and the data center question is I think a big one for for
Yeah,
sustainability. Um, and that's gonna be a problem that needs to be solved as far as, water use and those types of things. And so we're gonna build more data centers. AI is just creating that need, and the desire for it is not going to slow down. So I don't even think we need to worry about the ones who are leaving that we need to replace. We're gonna have to replace and grow facilities management leaders.
yep, yep, agreed. There's a lot there, so much
Yeah,
there to
so
to to
much.
think
That's
about.
another episode, right?
Yeah, there is a data center boom, but there's a lot of thought, that you've shared that very, very valuable. So what single mindset shift would most improve sustainability outcomes across portfolios?
I really think leadership, company leadership, and FM itself needs to stop treating FM just as a cost center that reacts and start treating it as an intelligence function that leads. The data sitting inside facilities operations, utilization, behavior, condition, performance, all of that. It tells you exactly what's happening in your organization. And it's something that you can't ignore. You have to be able to take that and make decisions about how you're going to invest, how you are going to treat the facilities themselves. So the mindset shift from cost center to strategic partner, that's the biggest one out there.
Good. So in kind of closing here, thinking about all this great information you've shared around the built environment and facilities management, decision making, communication, um, what's one workplace transformation you've seen, on a positive note, that changed more than the space itself?
I would say, the thing I've been thinking about and I've been following since I heard it was announced is what Walmart's doing with their new campus. I mean, they built it sustainably. They made a decision that just almost no organization at that scale does. They brought facilities over the past few years, maintenance operations completely in-house to self-perform. I mean, that's a statement how about who they believe they are. They're not outsourcing their environment anymore. Um, they own it, and then they took it one step further. They're going to actually brand that capability and sell it. That's an organization that looked at FM and said it produces value, and they decided it was a competitive asset. That is a fundamental identity shift for an organization that made that transformation.
That's good. I'll have to look into that, because like you said, all this whole conversation that we're having, if it's not taken into action by organizations, there's going to be a lack in success, in certainly different areas. And I think it's up to, professionals in the industry like myself, where I'm consulting and informing. What I try and do is not just look at projects as a one-off, but help them understand the process and what they're gonna need to actually see this through success. When you have design professionals, architects, engineers on the teams, which is great, you're getting them to design and they're coming up with ideas. They're probably working with the facilities managers and having conversations, but they're gonna turn it over, hand the keys over, and the building's gonna be maintained for the next 20, 30, 50 years, and that part of the life cycle is very, very important. That's where the most investment happens. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, you're right. There's a lot of value in that, in that example of Walmart. Kudos to them. So looking 5 to 10 years ahead, what gives you hope about the leadership in the built environment? You've explained the one example, but what else gives you hope in?
The thing that gives me hope, strangely enough, honestly, it's AI, but not for the reason most people might say. What AI is already showing us is that the things it can't replicate are exactly what makes workplaces function. Relationships, trust, understanding why a team is stuck or why a floor is simply empty, and why a decision keeps getting deferred. Those are human problems that require human judgment. 20 years ago, FM was fighting to even be seen as strategic. AI is making the argument for us because the intelligence that lives inside how people actually work together is irreplaceable. That gives me genuine hope for the workplace and the people in it, and definitely the built environment.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. People see AI as like, oh no, it's taking jobs, it's taking this and that, but you have to look at it as like, no, this is empowering us to do a better job.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
makes it more human because you
yeah,
have to separate that out and say what things can be automated, what things can AI do, what gets taken off the plate. And when you strip that off, all that's left is what the humans absolutely must do.
yeah, yeah. And there's some reality in some industries that it can take jobs, but we have to progress. And you're right. Being able to have the data at your fingertips to enhance your abilities and bring more value is a great hope about AI for sure. Last question for you. If leaders listening today changed one thing tomorrow, what should it be?
Hmm. I really think they need to think about uh, they have to accept the fact that net zero uh, probably isn't fully achievable without carbon offsets. I think the offsets somehow they don't count for people. Some people think they don't count. Um, I think that belief kind of scares organizations away from making some meaningful progress for what they could do and keep the goal. Keep the goal to go net zero. Absolutely. But when you disqualify offsets entirely, you you just made a perfect, the enemy of progress. So perfect is great as a goal, but you have to start making some changes somewhere. The deadline moves, the sustainability lead, spends 3 years defending a purity standard instead of actual reducing the impact. So sometimes it might not look like what you want to do, but you have to start moving the needle and you have to start doing it now.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I like what you said about, keep net zero goals, but because we need to be pushed. But let's figure out a practical pursuit and strategy on the how, and keep pushing towards it. It's possible.
It is.
Yeah. So I love what you said. I love how you've answered a lot of these questions. Very, very valuable insight, Amanda. Is there information that you've developed that's available to check out outside of your profile and the invisible
Oh,
architecture?
yeah. You can go to amandamuzzarelli.com if you want to learn more about me or see some of the writings about invisible architecture that are out there on my Insights blog.
Yes, it's valuable to focus on this communication piece, and I like how you frame it as invisible architecture. We think about the visible architecture all the time. Like you said, people aren't seeing the systems that are making this building function often. Well, thanks again for your time, Amanda, and sharing your great knowledge here. Please check her out at Amanda Muzzarelli, and of course, check her out on LinkedIn. And hopefully, we will see you on the next conversation. Thanks for listening to Clear Haze Exchange. New episodes drop every 2 weeks. You can catch Clear Haze Exchange on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, and more. Let's clear the haze about sustainability and energy efficiency together. Subscribe now and join the conversation.